Welcome to yet another episode of the theREN Experience, where we celebrate those who have made a difference in our times and inspire you to do the same. Now, if this podcast inspires you in any way, I kindly ask you to do me a favor by subscribing to the channel. We aspire to grow and bring you the guests that you want to see on the show, and your subscription will help us get there. Karibu sana. Hello, family.
Right. That's the way to start. That's the way to do it.
I guess I learned it from the best. Why family?
It's a good question. I've always liked the idea of using my spaces of influence as a place where people could come and like be natural and be themselves. I find that, and in fact, it's not that I find, it's a common fact that social media is fairly fickle. It's very ephemeral. It's very fake, actually. So what you see online is not what people are going through in real life. And the only people who ever really get to experience the real you is your family, right? And so I thought I would love that my community is able to experience each other as family, that we can be honest, we can be vulnerable, we can cheer each other when we need to cheer for each other, and we can call each other out when we need to call each other out. But even at the instances where we call each other out, it's with love rather than the intent to punish and to destroy. So it just fits. Like I would just, I'd meet people and I go, family, what's up? And then we started doing the podcast, and I'd open with hello, family. And then it became a whole thing,
Yeah. Your father was gunned down when you are at age 13, right? How did that influence your life, right? How did that shape your life? Because it still seems that family plays a big role in who you are and how you view the world around you. How did that experience shape you? Because you're still young.
Yeah, I think that, so it's not an experience I would wish on my worst enemy. But certainly it did mold the individual I am today. It's commonly established, particularly with people who work with children and child psychologists, that children who typically come from adversity or experience some sort of trauma very early on in their lives tend to have a feeling of foreshortened future. So they think the future is much closer than it is. One, and number two, that those events typically tend to direct the energies of those children. So this is why you'll find in a home, for instance, where one of the parents had a substance abuse problem, that it's not uncommon to find in that same home that one child is a phenomenal overachiever and the other child is like, a chronic criminal. It's because not completely, but in part, because being exposed to that level of trauma at an early age gives the children a sense of a foreshortened future, but also makes them more deliberate. And what that means is I don't expect that I'm going to live very long, so I get a lot of things done over a short space of time. And as a consequence of this, you become a high achiever, right? Because you experience trauma at a young age. So the idea of somebody dying to you is a real idea. It's not like this concept. It's real, and certainly that's what it did for me. The loss of my father is 90% the reason I am the man I am today. It's what drives me. It's the feelings of inadequacy that I sometimes have come from that experience. Yeah.
It's true that at some point, if you find one of the parents is an addict, then chances are high that, one of the kids will also be an addict, and then another one being an overachiever, as you said. But then what exactly made you become successful from that particular experience, right? So it's like, if someone has gone through the same experience, what are the things that you think could help them get along and achieve their goals and become who they want to become?
For the longest time, I allowed myself to be referred to as a self-made, right? And people would call me like, I even had it on my website. It was like self-made this and self-made millionaire. It was a lie. I wasn't aware at the time. Perhaps I was not wise enough to understand what the word self-made mean. There is no such thing as self-made. We're all made by somebody. And so what allowed me and continues to allow me to succeed is the tribe of mentors that I have around me. It's the people who work with me, some at a distance, some very, very closely, who work with me every day to make sure that I'm living up to my potential. And those are not always great conversations. Sometimes the people whose role it is in your life is to reflect what your potential is to you, is to tell you when you're living beneath it and to call you out on it and to keep you on the path of where you're supposed to be going. And other times, it might be somebody who cheers you on and somebody who tells you you're doing a great job, somebody who gives you the word of encouragement just before we started this, true story, just before we started this, my pastor, Pastor John Kabecha, who's like a phenomenal individual, really a great human being. I've been dealing with a few issues, particularly over the past week, which have been very pressing. And he called me last week. He and I were supposed to have a lunch, and I wasn't able to honor the lunch. And I said, look, I'm just dealing with a few things. Give me some time. Today, I'm in the middle of a meeting with lawyers, right? And he sends me a message in the middle of a meeting. It says, my brother, I pray the Lord's favor upon you today in whatever you meet as a challenge. Remember, you are more than a conqueror through Christ, Jesus our Lord. That's what I mean, right? A tribe of mentors. And so these words like really stirred me out. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do it. I've got the power, I've got the energy. And I think, again, a lot of us who are successful perhaps don't talk about that. We don't talk about the low moments when you need somebody to lift you up. And actually for me also, in the high moments when you need somebody to keep you humbled, right? Realizing that life is about opacity. So you want to make sure that you stay grounded, whether, whatever the high or whatever the low.
I think the people who surround us in a huge way influence the type of individuals that we become. And well, they can either build us or break us, right? They can either make us think that, we can achieve whatever thing we want to achieve, and maybe not. And most of the times we tend to agree with them. And speaking about mentors, I have been in touch with your friend, Robert Burale, all the way from Kenya.
Yeah. Robert is my brother.
How did you guys become brothers? I mean, how did it start? Maybe young people over here can learn.
Yeah, Robert and I, there's actually a lot to learn in terms of the relationship that Robert and I have. Robert and I have one of those relationships where we are in similar industries, but we cheer for each other no matter what the other one is doing. And that's very rare. I find that a lot of us, particularly a lot of our people, when one of us in a particular industry is doing well, the other ones get a sense of envy and like, why him and not the rest of us? What's so special about him? I often get those comments like, oh, it's just the way he speaks English or whatever the case might be, right? Anyway, so I came across a video of Robert. He was talking about the 4 kinds of friends you need to have, right? And I saw this video. I want to say somebody had it on like either a WhatsApp status or something like this. And I saw this video and I was like, wow, this guy's power, right? And years later, I'm in Kenya on business. And a young man that I mentor from Ghana, right? And again, as you lift, rise. So this young man that I mentor from Ghana was watching my videos just over a decade ago, decided that he wanted to be a public speaker like me, reached out and said, can you help me? And I was like, sure. And my process is fairly long distance. I don't hold your hand. I tell you the thing to do. I disappear for a year. Whether you do it or not is up to you. And this young man, I'd give him a task for the year. He'd get it done in 3 months. And he was just like really growing, right? So he and I became a bit close. We're still close. I live in Dubai. He's now moved to Dubai, this young man. Anyway, so I'm in Kenya on business. I'll go a roundabout way of making the point. I'm in Kenya on business. This young man reaches out to me and says, hey, he said to me, I'd love to see what your events look like when you put your events together. I said, sure. But I've got this mega event in Kenya come through. And we had this mega event in Kenya. And he came through to the event. And as he arrives the event was at the Kempinski. And he arrives at the event and he's walking with this tall guy. And I go, that guy looks familiar. And it was Robert Burale, right? And he goes, yo, my friend here wanted to meet you. I'm like, Robert, right? And so Robert and I connected and we became brothers. A few months later, that particular young man invited us to his event. that he was hosting in Kenya. Robert and I were headline speakers, together with an incredible lady, my sister Dee in Ghana, who was just amazing. I love Dee, and Dee, when you see this, I miss you. We need to catch up. So I really believe in the tribe. I think that the tribe is the most important thing you can build when you're a high potential individual, right? Because you're not always going to believe in your own potential, and you need a tribe around you that's going to remind you of who you are and what you're about and and I've got tribes. So my tribe is people everywhere. Like if I land in Kuala Lumpur, or I land in Rio de Janeiro, or I touch down in Austin, Texas, or I'm in Ontario, Canada, it doesn't matter where in the world. If I land in Hong Kong, there's somebody in my tribe that I can reach out to and go, dude, I'm in your country. School me, show me how things move here, show me how people work here. And that's how Robert and I kind of became brothers. But similar to my brotherhood with Robert, I have brotherhood with many other people. My brother Prince, for instance, in Ghana, we're brothers. We talk literally on a weekly basis, and we give each other advice. We're constantly sharing advice. My brother Surprise in South Africa. So I'm very lucky that I have, as I say, people around me with whom I get to share life and share brotherhood and share this experience called living.
And I think one of the things I would agree with you, and despite people having mixed feelings about Andrew Tate, I think one of the things I like about him is the way he speaks about brotherhood and having people who really have your back and people you can constantly rely on.
I'm going to change this. Yeah, so I was just changing the background. This is better. Yeah, exactly. And look, I'm not going to comment on Andrew Tate. I think there are plenty of comments out there. There are certainly some of the things that he says where I think, I can certainly understand his perspective and where he's coming from. And then there's certain things that he says or does that I don't agree with. But this is not a podcast about Andrew Tate. So
that's true. You are a very good storyteller. And congratulations. Oh, becoming the world's best storyteller. But how has storytelling shaped you into who you are right now?
My partner said to me the other day, she said, I love to, my partner can talk on the phone for like an hour and a half. She lives in a different country. So every time I see my phone bill, I'm like, eesh, right? Her and I were talking the other day, and she was like, dude, the way you tell stories is just unbelievable. I don't know that your question was, how has that shaped me? So it's certainly been a big part of the reason for my success. Right now in my venture firm, my growth fund, and guys can go and check it out, mygrowthfund.co. We're busy raising 3 sets of funds. We're raising a high alpha fund for ultra high net worth individuals called Mount Fletcher. We're raising a mid-market SME fund called VUCA, VUKA. And we're raising a growth stage fintech fund for the African continent, sub-Sahara, called the Fintech Africa Fund. And I noticed that our success as a team has been my ability to not only talk about the products that we're building, but the story why we're building those products. Human beings relate a lot more to that. So it perhaps has to do a lot with, public speaking, and the fact that I've been doing public speaking for 2 decades now, 21 years, actually. 21 years ago was the first time I won. It's been a long time. 21 years ago was the first time I won the world championship in public speaking. So I've been at this a really long time. And I've learned over the years how to use words to convey messaging, to communicate, to influence. And by God's grace, I'm given the opportunity to use it across the various things that I do.
How has religion helped you over the years?
Religion hasn't helped me. Faith has. I've been through my own fair share of difficulty. And I've found it very interesting how it was the most religious people that wanted to persecute me. The ones that bash the Bible and talk about the power of acceptance or forgiveness or whatever the case, were the ones least interested in the true version of events. They were more interested in how things appeared than how things are. My experience has been that the world doesn't need religion, the world needs faith. And so when I've experienced difficulty, and believe me, I have, it's been my faith that's been my solace. It's been my Lord and Savior who has been my abundant source of grace and strength, who, even at instances when I didn't know how I was going to come out of something, found a way for me to come out of the thing that I was facing. And there have been moments and instances in my personal life where I have felt despondent, where I have felt just disabused of the notion of trying to do something because I was just tired or whatever the case might be. And it's been my faith that's kept me going. So I don't preach to other people. I try not to be pious or to force people to do things in a particular way. But I think my experience of my Lord and Savior has been that at every material time, when I've been quiet enough to try and hear him, he has been loud enough to tell me what to do.
I think one of the main roles that faith does to us is help us get through those tough times, because they are there and they will come and they'll keep coming. They never stop. What?
Yeah, and the pragmatist in me, would often wonder is it the belief that made the thing real, or was the thing real and therefore I believed in it? Kind of which comes first, right? Does faith come before manifestation, or do you manifest and then have faith? I think it's the former. I think by its very nature, faith is the substance of things not seen. So if you must first experience it to believe in it, by design, it's not faith, right? And by the way, as a business builder, I live in faith every day. I take risk with my money, risk with my time, risk with my talent, risk with my ideas, and I start something that doesn't exist and try and make it real. And every day I can see it in my mind, even though other people around me can't. Just the mere fact of starting a business, the mere fact of giving birth to a child and raising them, having hopes for who that child will become in society, the mere fact of creating a podcast and seeking to create a space for people to have good conversations, all of those are manifestations of faith.
Yes, they are. And manifestation is also about mindset, right? And I've listened to your episode with Tom, which I'm pretty sure you really enjoyed. And one of the things that you guys covered intensively is the fact that a lot of young people, especially in the African continent, have a problem in terms of their mindset and what they believe to be true, right? And so how do we ensure that people, in as much as they try and work hard, right, and they try and put in their best effort, but how can we free them into having a mindset that makes them believe, you know what, despite my disadvantage, right, despite all the constraints that I've put before me, I can do this, right? I can still achieve what I want to achieve.
So is this like old school motivation? There's these like generation one motivational speakers who used to say things like tough times don't last and tough people do, and they'd say in life you must practice the 7 P's. Proper prior planning prevents a painfully poor performance. This is like generation one, like 1960s, 1970s style of motivational speakers. And then came that like really deep thinking school of Bob Proctor and those kind of guys. But somewhere around the 80s, there was this like really popular phrase. I don't know who said it first, but I've heard thousands of people say it now. They say fear is false evidence appearing real. That's bullshit. It's not true. Fear is very fucking real.
Absolutely.
Right? Just excuse my language. So when you are a young person in Africa and you are despondent, your fears are not based on something that's not real. You're watching around you the mismanagement of public funds, the dilapidation of public infrastructure and resources. You're watching around you the mismanagement of public funds, the dilapidation of public infrastructure and resources. You're watching you're watching people who are closest to politicians who were D and E grade students in your class live the most opulent lives. And the kids who were A and B students are the ones who are battling to find a job just because they don't know the right politicians. So when you're a young person in Africa and that's what you're experiencing, it's not false for you to have a sense of despondency. It's real. You are literally watching the physical manifestation. So when people say young people in Africa imagine limitations, it's not true. Those limitations are real. They're not imagining the limitation. They're not imagining the constraint. They're not imagining it's there. They're watching it, right? They're living it every day, right? I think that rather than say that, they're imagining something that's not real, we perhaps should spend our time thinking about teaching them how to exist as the best version of themselves in the environment that they're in. And for me, that's my frustration. I often see, people who run these programs that make perfect sense if you're running that program in the Northern Hemisphere somewhere in the US, but it doesn't for the environment in the market that you're delivering this program in. And that creates a sense of false hope, because a lot of these young people attend these programs and think that after that, their lives are just going to go sky high, and then that doesn't happen either. But I will say to each and every single one of those young people who may be watching this conversation that your mindset is a fact. It's not an imagination. And what I mean by that is this: your mindset is the concrete and the highway of your life. And so wherever the freeway and highway of your life goes, the concrete that's building that is your mindset. And having a positive mindset, a growth mindset, an abundance mindset is difficult in an environment of negativity, fixed and constrained, but it's not impossible. And the opportunity you have is to constantly check yourself mentally and make sure that you're thinking in that growth mindset's way. Haven't you noticed why? Have you seen this? Have you ever noticed how a young African person will leave their country in Africa somewhere, move somewhere else, the Middle East, the US, Europe, and all of a sudden they start being uber successful, ridiculously successful? It's because the environment they're in is the kind of environment where the mindset of growth and abundance is easier to metastasize than the environment they come from. But we have real work. I mean, quickly, and I don't want to, we have real work. Right now, as we speak in South Africa, there's load shedding. There's no electricity. I'm lucky where I am. I'm in Sandton. I'm in the richest square mile in Africa. My office is on the 5th floor overlooking Rivonia Road. Right across my office, I look at Sandton City, the mall, as people are driving in and out. I can see it. I'm lucky. I'm in the 0.001%. So when electricity power cuts hit, when I'm here at the office, we keep going because the office we're in is built in such a way that it can continue to go. But for most people running small businesses out there, that's not the case. For most people trying to raise children in their homes, that's not the case. And what happens when something like that happens, when there's no electricity, high inflation, no jobs, is people have a mindset of constraint. And it's difficult to say to those people, your mindset is not, your mindset is a fact. They are physically experiencing no power, no jobs, high inflation. They are physically living it. And I don't want to be one of these guys that says mindset, it's not true. Mindset is not something you imagine. It's a fact, but it is a fact you have the opportunity to tell yourself. You can wake up in the morning and change the script. It's more difficult in environments of constraints, but more difficult doesn't mean it's impossible.
I believe there are people who will be listening to this and saying, well, that's true. I think I have a constraint mindset. But where do I begin to change? Where does the change start?
It's a good question. Where does the change start? Let me think about this. So the first thing you can control, it kind of starts inside out, right? And I've not thought about the answer to this, but intuitively, I want to say that what I would control first is what I let in before I worry about how it comes out. So I did a masterclass in Kenya, and I said at the masterclass in Kenya that I don't have TV. And my team, I've got the most amazing media team, by the way. Like, I've got the greatest media team. They took that snippet and they posted it on TikTok. And TikTok went berserk. Like, people were really, how can he say he doesn't have TV? Is he talking about, what does he mean? Has he never seen a TV? He's clearly lying. Calm down. Right. I have the monitor, the physical monitor, that is the television. But I don't have the satellite that broadcasts signal into that monitor. Right. So I don't sit for 30 minutes a day watching news. I don't need that. If something important happens, I'm going to pick it up on social media or an email. If something that affects our industry or my business, I'll know about it. I don't need to be in the news every day trying to find out what's happening in the world. The reason I do this is because I want to control what I let in. Because I'm fully aware that if I let it in, it controls how I come out, right? And how I manifest the energy I project to the world. So I'm very aware of this. So for anybody, the question was, how do they manage their mindset? The first thing I would say is, what are you letting in? What newspapers are you reading? What books are you reading? What media are you consuming online? Because that which you bring into your space is it's the groundwork. It literally is the ground floor of how you begin to build the mindset that you want.
So now let's switch gears a little bit and move into entrepreneurship. One of the things that you constantly say is that when you start a business, you don't need investors, you need customers. And one of the episodes I did, the guest said the same thing. And why do you think we have the problem of more young people want to venture into business, wanting first to get investors before they can even get customers to prove that they actually have a business model that works, or they're solving a problem that really exists and customers are willing to pay for it?
I think because it's more natural. It's more natural, right? Like, if you're starting a business, you presuppose that you need capital to start the business so that you can service the customers when they come, right? I think it's natural. And frankly, it is true. It's true. You need capital to build a business, of course, right? And let's add some caveats here. There are certain businesses that you cannot start unless you have capital. Like, you're not going to start a complex financial services business unless you have capital. You're not going to start a mine unless you have capital. You're not going to, you're not going to start a heavy industrial engineering, a property plant hire business unless you have capital. Where are you going to get the property plant for hire, right? These are businesses that need the capital for you to have the very means of production to run that business. That's what I mean. So from that perspective, there are certain businesses that without capital, you cannot get into those businesses in the first place. If you, for instance, want to run a gas station, as they call it in the US, a petrol station, it's called in South Africa. But if you want to run one of those without capital, where are you going to put the land? What land are you going to put? Where are you going to put the forecourt? Where are you going to put the retail site? Where are you going to get the pump? How are you going to get the liquid under the ground? How are you going to pay your staff? You need capital before you can even start that business. And so to say that person starts selling fuel before you get the retail station is nonsense. It's not true. However, there are certain businesses that you can get customers for and build that business, right? And these are typically businesses where your time, your skills, and your network are the value that you can bring into that business. Those businesses, you don't need capital to start. You need a customer. You need to go out there and say, customer X, we have this value that we have created for you. Come and buy this value from us. And from every single customer, you reinvest and create additionally more value, right? So that for me is how I approach that question. So I always say to entrepreneurs, you don't need value to start it. You don't need capital to start a business. You need capital to grow a business. But to be clear, there are some businesses that without capital are near on impossible to operate.
You have watched The Founder, the movie, yeah? And
of course, that movie is like the Bible for any entrepreneur.
so one of my
both of good and bad traits, by the way.
I suppose. So one of my main takeaways was you have, as an entrepreneur, you have to build systems, right? Someone else needs to be able to deliver how you are delivering when you're not there. And one of the problems that we have, and I think it's huge, is that people in the continent, or especially young entrepreneurs, don't build networks. Like they want to be the ones doing everything, right? And how do you think entrepreneurs in the continent can kind of like start building networks that can outlive them?
It's tough. It's tough. It's not easy. I think that it isn't that people don't do it because they don't have the desire to. I think they don't do it because it's complex. It's difficult. Building systems into a business is difficult. It's a lot of work, right? So we have an accelerator platform called the School of Scale, right? So under my growth fund, we used to do a lot of work to build entrepreneurs by doing exactly what you're talking about. They'd come to us running a business. The average entrepreneur was doing about $5 million a year, but they were the business. They were running the business. And the work we would do with them would be to help them make themselves irrelevant in the functioning of the business, right? Yeah. So how do you standardize processes? How do you automate processes? How do you create a rules-based organization? How do you create command structures and lines of functions so that you have, at the very least, command and control, but also you have vertical functions that people can use to deliver functional value to the customer? Then once you've done that, how do you build a culture to keep all of this going? Most entrepreneurs don't know how to do that. They're like, look, I buy this from that supplier and I sell it to that customer and I make 20 cents in between. That's how most entrepreneurs go. And so we spent years digging deep into their businesses and helping them scale. And we realized that scaling is a code. Similar to writing a code for a website or a code for a program or a code for an Excel spreadsheet that you want to operate as a macros, scale is a code. So we built our own code for scale, and we've taken that IP and we've now housed it into our new platform called the School of Scale. You can go and check it out, theschoolofscale.co. And the main idea is we ask every entrepreneur who wants to join the School of Scale, could you disappear for your business for 90 days or more, and your business still functions and achieves all of its functional lines and all of its revenue? And if the answer is no, you should look at the School of Scale. Now, not everybody qualifies for the School of Scale, right? The qualifying criteria is $1 million in turnover. The reason that criteria is there is because this is not for people who have ideas or people at that micro stage where they're still trying to figure things out. They've got like 1 or 2 customers. This is for people who they've built the business, they've got the product, they've got the marketplace, they understand what they do, but they're stuck. They didn't build a business, they built a cage. And that cage is the job that they have given themselves to run that business. And so if they're not there physically running the business is not going to run. And that's what the School of Scale is for. It's to get entrepreneurs out of the space so that, similar to me, as I'm sitting here with you having this conversation, the team is running. They're doing what they need to be doing because the code is in place.
I know you follow Patrick Bet-David, and one of the books that...
Of course, P.B.D, legend.
By the way, he was the guy who actually inspired me to get into podcasting and storytelling and content creation. Right? So it was really inspiring seeing you that, you also is a guy that you follow. And
I'm a big fan of Patrick. I've been following him for years. I remember from when I first saw his ad where he was talking about how he started selling insurance from house to house, knocking on people's doors. And then at the end of the ad, you see him get in this Ferrari 458 and drive out. When I was in Miami last year on tour in November, and I got to share the stage with Tia Claire Toomey, who was the fittest human being in the world. She's won the CrossFit more than any other human being in the history of CrossFit. And I shared the stage with Michael Phelps, who was the greatest Olympic athlete of all time. This guy has won more gold medals than any other Olympic athlete, right? So when I was in Miami on tour working with these guys, and I actually, I was like, I need to go see where Patrick's house is, because I know he'd, bought a house, right? And so the guy who was taking us around, it took us and he was like, that's his house. And I was like, 2 years, 3 years, we're coming. We're gonna be there. So I'm a huge fan of Patrick, and I like Patrick in the sense that I like the way he thinks, I like the way that he moves, but I like the fact that he's not apologetic about how he sees the world. And in today's world of wokeness and cancel culture, a lot of people are too afraid to be honest about how they see the world. And Patrick is like, look, this is the way that I see the world. Capitalism works. If you want to make money, you want to be in a capitalist society. End of story.
Yeah, he also said, if you want the 4-hour work week, well, this is the wrong place for you.
100%. And I'm by the way, I share that. I share that. I yesterday was Sunday. I was here at the office. I had a meeting with one of our new investors and something that we're doing. And then I had a meeting with our lawyers. I was at the office on a Sunday. I took 2-3 hours. I came into the office, did some work and left. And I'm at the stage where I don't have to do that, but I want to do it. This is important. So let me just say this to you very quickly. This is important. One of the truths you have to tell yourself when you're an entrepreneur starting a business is, what is your truest intent? There are some people for whom their truest intent is simply to make a living, pay for their kids' school fees, pay for their medical insurance, drive a decent car, live in a nice middle-class home, and afford themselves. And that's okay. There are some people for whom their truest intent is building a small business or a medium-sized business that they can leave to their kids when they pass away. That's okay too. Then there are those of us who are trying to take over the world. And that's okay too. It's the people who went, why would Elon Musk risk his time, reputation, and money buying a social media platform that isn't profitable, who the number of users on which he cannot verify, and create for himself the additional headache of having one more business to run when he's the wealthiest man in the world? Why would he do this? He does it because that's who he is. And I think when you make the decision to become an entrepreneur, the most important decision is not making a decision to become an entrepreneur. It's making the decision to know what kind of entrepreneur you are. Are you the hyperscale, hyper growth, go really, really quickly and conquer as much market share as possible? Or are you the lifestyle entrepreneur that builds a decent business, lives a good life, and has the opportunity to go to their kids' prize giving? Which of these are you? And live according to that. And neither one is better than the other. They're just different.
And they're all right. Nobody's wrong.
And they are all right. And that's the point. That's what I was saying about Patrick, right? Like, that's the point. The point is, people need to learn that just because you and I are not the same doesn't mean you're wrong. We can both be right. We're just not the same, right? Like, we're both right. We're just not the same. So when people go, it's not healthy to work 6 days a week, get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here with that shit. You think Goldman and Sachs built Goldman and Sachs by working a 4-day work week? Get the fuck out of here. It's like, come on. You think Adrian Gore built Discovery working a 4-hour work week? You think Whitey Basson built ShopRite working a 4-hour work week? No. You think Uncle James built Equity Bank working a 4-hour work week? No. That ain't how the shit works. So you don't get to call how I live toxic just because you can't keep up, right? Let's be clear. If I play NFL or NBA and you don't play at that league, you can't go, it's competitive, it's toxic. No, it's not. It's the level at which I compete. You're allowed to watch and you don't have to comment to try to denigrate people. And so I think it's important. Like, it's important for us to go, and they have words now, like it's toxic. It's not. It's just a different model of work. And I make no apologies for the fact that across my businesses, I expect that. I expect you to be in an hour before the official start time at work, and I expect you to leave an hour and a half after the official time of work. I expect you to be able to answer your Slack channel on a Saturday for at least 1 or 2 hours a day. I expect it. Now, if you don't want to do it, that's cool. Just don't come here. There are many other places you can go, and I'm sure you'll find a great place, but that's the culture we've built here, because we don't think about our work as labor. We think about it as work. There's a difference. Labor is tenuous, it's strenuous, it's unpleasant. We don't think about our work as labor. It's a passion of love. We enjoy what we do. And so, we're not sitting here counting how many hours we're doing it. That's not how we work. So yeah, man, that's how I feel about that.
Most of the times the entrepreneurs who become successful are the ones who enjoy the process, right? And nowadays it's becoming hard because most of the times people go like, you know what? People can't work for 10 or 12 hours a day. People can't respond to messages on a weekend. It's like, it's fine, right? But you can go do that elsewhere, not here. And I think it's the same thing that also Elon did when...
Let me also just say one more thing. Like, life is also about phases. Like, I went through a phase last year. I was exhausted. There was a time last year I was exhausted. And for 3 months, there was a lot of noise in my head. I was distracted. I couldn't concentrate. You know what white noise is? You remember those days when you had like the old TV, the television, and it wouldn't catch the signal. It had like that.
Yeah,
I just had a lot of white noise in my head. Yeah. Like I had a lot of white noise in my head. And it doesn't matter what you're trying to do. If there's white noise in your head, you can't think, right? And so I had to take a decision then to just take a step back and just reevaluate. So there's certain businesses I'm not involved in anymore. Certain directorships I used to hold that I don't hold anymore. Like I've really just trimmed my life and simplified my life. And Michael, who's one of my best friends, helped me work through this process. Like, why are you talking to these people? Why are you in this company? Why are you on that board? Why are you? And making the decision quite deliberately to get out of things. Best decision ever. But the point is that there are stages. There are stages where you want to be going 120%. And then there's stages where you're like, I'm a bit tired. I need to catch my breath. But knowing where you are, the only thing I object to is people who think that their way is the only way. That's not true.
And speaking about stages, one of the things that surprises me most of the times is if an entrepreneur becomes successful, they'll go ahead and say, you know what? Well, you need to sleep for 8 hours, right? You need to have a work-life balance. And these are the things that I think I should have done during that time. But I think it's bullshit, right? Because I'm like, if you have to go back to that moment, I don't think you'll be getting 8 hours of sleep, right? You'll be grinding.
Yeah, absolutely. My model of this is the notorious RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whose documentary you must watch, by the way. Phenomenal lawyer and then judge in the U.S. Supreme Court. She was really at the forefront of the struggle for women's equality and the recognition of equality under the law. Just an amazing human being. But she said, I was watching an interview of hers, and she said that what she does is she will work ruthlessly for like 5 days a week, have very few hours of sleep, and then for one day in the weekend, she just crashes and she's not available at all, right? And so for her, that was the balance. The balance was to throw yourself so intensely into a body of work that you're sleeping 3 or 4 hours a day. But then on the 5th day, you just completely reboot your system and you allow yourself to rebuild up, right? That's similar for me. Like there's a day in the week for me where it's very difficult even for me to be like, I want to work. I'm just like, nah, my brain can't connect. But on other days in the week, I'm intensely in. So the point is, find what works for you. Stop spending time trying to tell or convince other people that what they're doing is toxic. Just find the thing that works for you. If the 4-hour work week works for you, have at it, right? If working half day for 6 days works for you, as a friend of mine does, have at it. But if working as the way I work, then have at it too. We're all different.
You either get emotions or progress. You don't get both.
That's right. I said that on the Tom Bellew interview.
Yes,
you either get the emotion or you get the progress, but you don't have both. I got to tell you this. There's a movie called Red Notice, Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. Yeah. I'm watching the movie. I'm on a flight somewhere Ryan Reynolds and The Rock are arguing. This is a year after my interview with Tom Bellew, where I said, you either get the emotional progress, you don't get both. I'm watching the movie, and Ryan Reynolds says to The Rock, you either get the emotional progress, you don't get both. I'm like, oh shit, they took my line. They took my line. I need to phone somebody. They owe me some money. I want my money. I want my money, B. Pay me my money. Anyway.
That is super funny. I mean, so most of the people are used to seeing you as, an entrepreneur, a public speaker, but who are you outside work? Who is Vusi outside?
I'm a dad, man. Like, I'm a dad. I love my kids, and I'm like a dad. Like, let me put it to you this way: if you come into my house and my kids have taken a blank wall and have decided to paint it in multicolored rainbow colors, I'm not the parent telling them what they're doing is naughty. I'm the parent mixing the paint. I'm that guy, right? So
you join them.
So yeah. I'm my kids are my best friends. We're together as often as we can. We play as much as we can. That for me has become numero uno in terms of all my priorities. It's just prioritize them, because I'm beginning to realize, that they're getting older. My youngest is 12 now, so they're at that stage now where they're getting older, they're getting more advanced, they're getting smarter. He turns 13 this year. So he will be this year the age I was when my father died. And I think that was the switch when I realized he's moving, he's at that age now. And I remember my relationship with my dad when I was that age. And I remember that I didn't really care what my dad did for a living or how much money he had or didn't have or where we lived. I just cared he was my dad. I loved him and I wanted to spend time with him. And so I'm like that with my kids. I'm a dad. That's who I am.
Oh, I also hope someday I'll have a family. But how does families change people? Because, I mean, when you were speaking about your family, you seem to be so passionate about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different for all of us. Certainly for me, it changed the types of risks that I take. There's just certain types of risks I don't take anymore. And there's certain types of risks I think twice before I take them, because I understand the impact it will have on their lives. So it's not just me, right? It's them as well.
That's true. And now you have to play, well, you're really a father to them, but you also have to take up the role of leadership. And
You got it.
How paramount is it for young people to keep on learning and never stop learning? They shouldn't go like, you know what? I've graduated, books off the table.
I mean, I know that's predominantly your audience, right? Young people, but it's not just that young people should never stop learning. It's that if you're a human being and you're alive, you should never stop learning. You should constantly be learning, constantly improving yourself, constantly questioning what you know and unlearning some of the things you believe to be true, constantly challenging yourself. And the reason for that is this. We're busy hiring in our firm, right? Like, we're busy scaling up. We're hiring investment analysts, hiring conversion analysts, investor relations people. Like, we're building. Like, we've got a lot going on. For the School of Scale, they're hiring the full faculty team, the program team, the product manager. Like, we're scaling. And 3 years ago, for each of those roles, we would have consulted and contracted an HR company. We would have told them who we are and what we do. They would have gone out to the marketplace and done a bit of a survey about what is best practice, come back to us with a designed job spec, how much we should pay the person. We would have agreed, signed with them. They would have gone, recruited that person, and would have taken, 10% of the person's annual pay, right? Today, we went on ChatGPT. We inserted the job. We told the platform what we want. It wrote the full spec of the job. Then we asked it, what does this person earn on average in this market? It told us that too. And we asked a couple of other questions. We built a highly sophisticated job description for the job ad, posted the job ad. Then we went on Juno Journey and we created our full onboarding platform for everybody in the team so that it's automated and runs via AI. But even the process of recruitment, we plugged in to the Juno Journey. So everything from when the person applies all the way to when they join and sign their contracts and get induction, all online, all run by AI, no human interaction. So the recruitment agency is gone. The HR person that would have needed to do induction and training is gone. And now we're busy with the process of doing continuous learning and development. We're putting all of that online. So that's gone. And that's just the stuff on the HR side. So the reason you want to constantly be learning and growing is precisely because it's moving and changing so fast that if you're not upskilling yourself in the context of what technology is doing today, you're going to be in trouble. You know, when we do copy for ads, whether it's for School of Scale or My Growth Fund or my own personal brand, Vusi Thembekwayo, we don't go to a copywriter. We use Jasper, jasper.ai. You go to Jasper, it's got about 38 different templates and modules. You say, Jasper, I want to create an ad using the AIDA formula for this product. You plug the product in and Jasper writes the full copy for you. Then you can take the copy and go on Canva. So, hi, Canva, here's the copy. Please design me the poster. And Canva will give you the poster. Now, before you know it, you've got the ad and you've got the copy and you can flight it on social media. No human being involved, but for the person driving that process. This is where the world is today. I think we're going back to the era of being generalists again, not like hyper specialized people, where you're going to need to know a little bit about finance, a bit about HR, a bit about marketing, because the technical work, the deep work, the artificial intelligence and the machines will do it much better than you and I, right? I mean, a few years ago, there was in the venture capital space, a few years ago, there was a due diligence platform released called UDiligence. I mean, it's incredible how advanced UDiligence is now. If you're raising capital using a roll-up vehicle in the US, it's incredible how advanced AngelList is, right? And all of these are becoming more and more sophisticated and more complex. And the point I'm making is, you really want to be dangerous enough that you know enough about everything. You can work in one function, but you need to know enough about everything. And so that's why continuous growth, development, and learning is even more important.
And it's so fascinating. And because ChatGPT was just started last year, right? Late last year. And the impact that it's making right now, it's insane, right? And people used to say, you know what, well, AI wouldn't take the creative tasks, but then now we are seeing things such as copywriting, they're already taken. Ultimately, what do you think people will be doing, right? AI and technology is freeing us from doing all the, stuff that we keep on doing every single day. But then ultimately, what do you think people will be doing?
I don't know. I think that's a good question. Let me answer your question this way, and then I must run. I've got a board meeting which starts just now. But let me answer your question this way. At the turn of the century before last, 90% of human labor was agrarian. Human beings worked in farms. But the productivity and output of the agricultural sector wasn't as high as it is today. So 90% of human beings worked in farms, but the productivity and output of farms, the productivity of farms weren't as efficient, output volumes weren't as high as they are today. Today, less than 10%, I understand, that works in the agricultural sector, but the output is an order of magnitude more. Because what roboticization, mechanization, and industrialization did is it took the small little farmer who had laborers working, mechanized that whole process, built a massive industry around it, and automated how the mechanization of the industry of the process works, so that one person with technical skill can oversee a much bigger unit of production than would have otherwise been the case. And because it was machines doing it, the efficiencies are higher than human beings. Now, it isn't true that we're hungry. We still have food today, right? But also at the same time, think about what it did to the agricultural sector. The turn of the century before last, in the late 1800s, when farmers were planting their crops, it was a bit of a gamble. Today, with the genetic mutation and the genetic mutation and artificial genetic coding that they're doing on seeds, they know exactly what strain of what type of soy they need to plant to get the output that they want in a particular part of the world different to another part of the world. So what all of this technology has done is it's made us more efficient in the world. I expect that it'll do the same. So I'm not dystopian about the future. I'm not at all. I think the future is going to be great. Think about the young woman who was 20 years old and living in Europe in the 1910s or the 1920s, kind of post World War One, before World War Two, working in a small factory as a seamstress. If you went to that young woman and told her that somebody her age, 100 years from then, would be living in Dubai, have 100,000 followers on Instagram, and would be making a living from posting pictures wearing clothes, you would have thought that's crazy. But that's what technology has done. I think when people get nervous about technology, they shouldn't. You shouldn't be dystopian about it. In the short term, it can be quite disruptive, but in the long term, it's always a net positive. Always a net positive. The things we human beings will do are the boring things, because the boring things are the creative things. So you should have time when you're bored. That's how you get creative, right? I mean, think about it. When you want to be creative, you don't sit there and think, okay, let's be creative now. You don't believe me? Call your team and say, we're having a creative session tomorrow starting at 2:00 and see how much creativity is going to flow. No creativity flows. You want to be creative? Wake up in the morning and take a cold shower. You'd be very surprised how many bright ideas come to you when you're standing underwater, right? Like, I have this app on my phone called Endel, Endel. Like, I plug that thing on, I plug in a certain module, 17 minutes, and I come out of there with the most amazing ideas, because it forces my mind to think and buzz at a certain, like frequency, and that's my frequency of creativity. So the point I'm making is, I'm excited about what technology is going to do because of what technology has historically done for us, right? And that's why I think we shouldn't be nervous. If you told, a horse carriage operator in New York in 1904 that, there would be this thing called Uber, they would have thought, what are you talking about? But here we are today, and it's happening. I think we should be excited, not nervous. In the short term, very disruptive, but in the long term, it's a net positive.
One last question before we close up.
Yes, sir.
We have spoken about learning and how it influences people,
Yes.
make them better, and that everyone has to keep on learning. Can you suggest 3 pieces of content, either a book, an article, a movie, that you think young people listening to you right now who are either aspiring entrepreneurs or leaders should definitely check them out? Or more if you have them.
A book is probably a toss-up between Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power and Jim Collins' Good to Great. I think to be a fully formed, functioning human being in the modern world, if you're in business, certainly you need to know those books. I've read those books. A movie, I'm a big movie buff. Like, I'm one of these people that recites lines from movies, right? That's my favorite pastime. Movie, I think, is a bit more complex. I think it depends. I think if you want to know where the future is, watch Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock. And they live in a town called San Antonio, and he gets frozen in the year 1998, and they freeze him, like in this process of cryostasis or whatever. And he wakes up in that town in 2035 or something, and it's like way into the future. And some of the things that happen in that movie, we're watching them happen today, right? So Demolition Man is, and it's a great action flick. You can watch it over an hour, 10 minutes, and you'll enjoy it. If we were to talk movies, I mean, again, you can't be a fully functioning adult in the modern world unless you've watched The Godfather. You have to watch The Godfather. You've got to dip into a bit of Quentin Tarantino. My personal favorite is Reservoir Dogs. It's not a particularly educative piece of theater, but it's vulgar. It's proper Quentin Tarantino. But I would also say watch The Great Debaters, starring Denzel Washington. Phenomenal movie. Yeah, I mean, phenomenal movie. And so kind of for me, those are like seminal pieces. And when it comes to what you should read, I think daily you should be on Medium looking for interesting people to follow. You should be on Substack looking for interesting people who publish interesting blogs that you want to follow, like daily. Like, I probably subscribe to like 40 different people, from Grit Capital all the way through to Brighter Bridges, who share all sorts of insights and ideas. 90% of the things I'm learning every day, I'm not reading them as was the case 10 years ago in Wall Street Journal or Financial Times. I'm picking them up from people who are publishing interesting Substacks and have created blogs and are on Patreon that are subject matter experts at something. They have an inside track into something and they're sharing that insight every single day. And then I'm going to share one last trick with the people watching this. If you're African, do yourself a favor. You'll thank me later. Take your phone. If you're on Twitter, do this. Take your phone, go to your Twitter trends, go to your location settings, and change the location so that it shows you the trends, not of the country you are in, but of the country where the industry you are in is the most advanced. If you're in technology, you want to set your Twitter trend location to Palo Alto, right? Because that's where Silicon Valley is. If you're in finance, you want to set your trends to New York because that's where Wall Street is, right? And you'll see the most amazing thing happen. When you log onto your Twitter, as you start reading the trends, you'll see where the people who are in your career, in your industry, who are the most advanced, what are they talking about every day? You don't catch yourself talking about minor issues that are based on your small little local environment. That's a part of how you change your mindset, is by controlling what you consume rather than just allowing these apps to serve you whatever they want to serve you. That's like a great hack. You can thank me later.
That's powerful. For those listening this one, don't forget to subscribe on Vusi Thembekwayo's YouTube channel and VT podcast. This was amazing.
Thank you, my brother.
Really appreciate it, brother. Have a good one.
Asante. Ciao.
Karibu san.